Okay, welcome back to the channel. So today, you've probably seen this sitting in the back of some of my videos over the time, but today we're actually going to be working on this one. So this is just a cheap GMC lathe. So I bought it for my son. He has since moved on to a real lathe and was going to get rid of this one, but then he couldn't find a part that was supposed to be with it. Just the actual, I can't remember the term, just this particular component here, which is basically the holder for the wood. So I managed to source a replacement, but then the other problem with it is that when you put your piece of wood in the bed here and you tighten everything up, it actually bows out that way. So what ends up happening is the bed actually sort of bows a little bit like that, and what that causes, number one, is for the wood not to be secure properly, and number two, the belt actually ends up coming off because it ends up being so loose because you can't actually get it to be tight enough. So what I'm going to try and do is I have these two great big sucker of brackets. I'm going to try and bolt probably in here just to give it a little bit more strength, and then in the back here get off. I'm going to try and put a couple of brackets in the back of this as well. So that's what today's episode is going to be about, hopefully. So we'll see what we can do. The other thing was that it was missing all the screws for the back cover, so that wasn't helping keep everything lined up either. So I've also got these smaller brackets, so I might put these inside here and see if that helps basically keep everything in one place. So I've already bolted the bed down, and I have had bolts in here as well, but it's actually still flexing at this point here. So you can actually, when you tighten the piece of wood in, you can see this particular part of the frame start bowing out that way, which is then what causes all the problems. So if I can stiffen it all up, then I can then use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull all the other stuff off this. I don't know how successful it'll be, but again, my mindset is that, let's give it a crack, see if I can get it working properly. If it doesn't, then I'll get rid of it and get another lathe, because I don't want to do some turning, and you sort of can't if the lathe is actually buckling under the pressure of what you're doing to it, and not exactly putting a lot of pressure on it, but it needs to be able to hold the wood the way that it's supposed to. Right, I'll just give it a bit of a quick vacuum just to clean up the mess that's there before I make more mess. Alright, so I think I'm going to have to pull it off the bench because I can't work on it where it is, and I need to be able to move it around. Alright, let's make that movable now. So yeah, what the plan is to fit one of these here, with the plan of actually getting it to sit in behind these bolts here. So it'll get bolted to the frame here and bolted up there, so that'll stop it from bending in this direction here out that way. And then I might put another couple inside back here. So just inside here, just on there, to stop it from bending, being able to bend that way as well. So this particular part here is just married up against the plate to hold the bearings in. So I might just need a longer bolt to get into there once I put these in. Alright, I guess there's no real way to find out if it's going to work unless I do it. So I guess we'll start by pulling off those nuts, sorry, the bolts out of the headstock there, and see what I can do. So yep, these are little tiny little shorties. They won't even, I don't even think they'll get through this bracket. Oh, they will, just. Not very useful though. Alright, so I'm basically going to drill a hole there and a hole there, and then I will drill these holes out, but instead of drilling the one that's in the middle here out, I will drill 2 holes where the bolts have got to go through for the motor. So I'll just mark those up. So just to show you from this angle, so I'm going to have a hole here, and then one there and one there. Then with this one, right, I'm not going to drill that one out. I'm going to drill 2 holes here and here through the bracket, and then I'm just going to make sure that this lines up on the edge of this hole here, so I'm not actually impacting any of this particular part of it. The bracket where it sits up against here isn't going to be impacted by whatever I bolt onto here, because it stops at this particular lip here. So as long as I keep it away from all the moving parts there, I can still get in to service it, and it's not going to build up dust or anything at that particular point or damage anything. So make it happen. So I've marked 2 holes here for this one and that one, so that's going to be the ones that are going to be for the motor bracket, and then obviously I've just marked all the holes for there, so I'll drill some holes. Actually, I'm going to have to find the bolts first, because otherwise I might end up with 2 big or 2 small holes. So I've got some galvanised 8mm bolts here that will fit okay. They're about the right sort of length that I need, with a couple of washers on there to wash things out, to step it out a little bit with a lock washer on it as well. That'll be fine for what I'm trying to do here. So, alright, welcome back. It's the next day for me, so just to let you know where I got up to yesterday, I marked the holes for the brackets. I've also found some bolts to go through for the bearing caps. So these are just old washing machine bolts from my collection. So I'm going to put those through once I've drilled the holes in the brackets. The other thing I've thought about is I need to at least try and get 1 bolt probably through the 2 brackets that are going to go on here together. So where they sit, there is a little bit of an overlap, so I might just have to maybe try and do some careful drilling and get 1 bolt in through there just to hold it all together. The other thing I've discovered is that this bracket here is not quite square. So probably heat that up and tweak that a little bit. Alright, so getting into today's activities. First thing first will be to pop the 2 holes through here. So I'll grab the drill and a drill bit and put a pilot hole through first, I think. So I think I said yesterday I'm going to be using 8mm bolts. So I'm just going to drill a smaller pilot hole and then deepen it out with the 8mm. A little bit of cutting fluid on there, so I don't burn my drill to pieces. Alright, that's those 2 holes drilled. I'll just line them up on the lathe now, just to see how far off I am on anything. So they're 8mm bolts, so I'll probably end up with a 10mm hole. And a quick check says that I'm actually pretty good for a change. I'm normally miles off when I do these sort of holes. So the only one I've obviously got to be careful of is this one, because it's so close to the edge there. Not that I'm worried about the end splitting out of this great big lump of steel, but that's one. And for the next. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the holes reasonably well lined up. So what I'll do is I'll actually bolt those in and just hold them there while I drill the other holes that I've got to drill here and here and here and here. Alright, so I'll just put this bolt in. working hole. That's not bad, I don't mind the line up with that at all. There we go, that's pretty good. A little bit of a twist in it, but I think that's because I've got there's lock nuts, lock washers on the bolt, so now I can drill the rest of the holes. That's good. Alright, that's the first hole. I'll actually put the bolt on that one so it holds it in place for the rest of them. Right, so then I'm going to put one Alright, so as you can see, I've got the two bolts up here, I've got the two bolts down there. I'm going to put a bolt hole here, but this one I'm going to leave here, but then I'm going to line it up when I put the other bracket in on the other side, so that I can get one bolt into both the brackets. So we'll do that next. Alright, minor complication here because the bolts have a non-cut piece on the thread. That's right, we'll just get it up as far as it'll go. And add some washers, need another washer. Alright, so I'll just tighten all these up and see how it feels. Alright, there we go. Put that bracket on. Now I'll look at the next one. So the only thing I've got to think about on this bracket is when I bolt this bracket in, of course I need a bolt coming up from the underside here, which is going to go through the rail on this part here, but then when I bolt it up I'm then going to have bolt heads sitting on top of the bench. So I've either got to raise the whole lathe up when I bolt it back down again, or drill obviously a bigger hole in the bottom so then I can put the bolt through it and then have the bolt sitting up against the frame inside the hole. I'll have a think about that and then I'll do something about it. So the other thing I'm going to have to do as well with this one is when I put this in, there's the vents for the motor to breathe. Unfortunately this bracket is resting right up against them, so for where I want to put it in the middle here, it's always resting up against it, so I might just have to cut this part of the breather off just so that it doesn't have to worry about mashing that up. So I'll have a think about that and deal with that in a minute as well. So it's only the bottom breather down the bottom here that's got the problem. The top one actually misses when the bracket's bolted up, so that one won't be a problem. Okay, so next thing to do is break out the power tools, and we'll cut this fin off so I can get this bracket in here. I'm just going to trim the top piece off as well. Kind of doesn't look like it needs it, but it seems to need it anyway, so I'm just going to trim a little bit off that as well. Alright, there we go. That's okay now. So all I've got to do now is I'll probably just drill a hole through for both bolts. Sorry, for the bolt that's going to go through both of them before I do the bottom bolts. So I'm just going to line this up by eye. Just thinking what I probably should do is put a clamp on it, then I don't have to hold it. Alright, that's the pilot hole drilled. So just going out to a 6mm now. Alright. Clean up that mess. And that bolt fits through quite nicely. Just put a couple of washers on it as well. Alright, now I can do the next holes. We don't have to worry about doing pilot holes for these ones. It's only going into the frame rather than actually drilling through the great big bracket. And the fun thing is, I think that this hole here is really close to the frame rail there. Saying that, I'm going to drill a pilot hole now because I need to just drill a hole through so then I can actually come in on this side just with the pilot hole, and then I'll drill the main hole that way. Alright, so that's the pilot holes drilled. Now I'll drill a bigger hole. I'm just going to go a slightly bigger hole because I've gone on a bit of an angle there. So I just need to go slightly across a little bit. Alright, grab some washers and some nuts and bolts and do it all again. Of course the holes are at a bit of an angle, so it's a bit ugly. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this middle nut up and then just try and have a bit of a go at the hole, that bottom one, because it's just a little bit too crooked. Just see if I can pull it into line a little bit with an extra drill. Alright, as you can see, there's the bolts going into the headstock, there's the bolts going into the frame, and then on the rail, and then we have the bolts going into the frame there, and then I've just got to put the bottom ones in the bottom of the rail here. I'm just going to take these nuts and bolts out, because I can't get the hole properly on the vertical there. So I think I'm only going to put two in here, just one at the corner and one at the other end. I'm not going to put the middle one in. Alright. I'm just going to put a bolt in that one just to hold it while I do the next one. So that top one might come out too. Alright, so the holes are drilled underneath here now. I also just made them a little bit bigger so that I can get the nuts through, the bolts through rather. So the other problem I discovered when I put this in was that when I put the other bolt in here, that the bolt that I was putting in through this hole, of course, was hitting this bolt that was coming through this side. So I just found a shorter bolt, so I'll just put that one in instead. That's that one. This one's got a washer on it. Alright, as you can see, I've got all the bolts in now. So I'll just tighten all that up now, and that'll really strengthen this side up. And then I've just got to do pretty much the same on the other side. I may do something different because of how much more fun that is to get all the way into there without taking the motor out, because I don't want to, but I might have to. We'll see. Alright, time to start on the other bracket. So I won't bore you with the details of watching it all happen again. I'll just stop it during certain spots and show you where I'm up to. Okay, so as you can see, I've got both of the brackets on the front here. You'll notice that obviously I've only got one bolt here. I don't have another bolt there. I decided not to put the other bracket in for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, as you can see in that big dark box there, because on this side I had to cut these fins down. I can't actually get the angle grinder in there without making some serious mess inside here, so I decided I wouldn't do it. Secondly, I've then got to line up these holes and these holes. It would be easier if I could take this panel off, but that panel is this fascia panel here. Sorry, you're upside down. And I'm not going to cut that off because it's just too hard. So coming back, you can see I've got the headstock back in. Now, that was actually working okay without too many issues. This headstock beam bends back a little bit when it's under load. So that's good because it's this bit moving, which means it'll have a limit, whereas before it was this part that was moving. So the problem with that obviously was that when that was pushing that way, that would make this belt come off and it would actually fall off. So the fact that that now doesn't happen means I've got enough strength in here to hold it together, which means the frame isn't warping. The only issue it has caused me is that if I ever need to get this off, there's too many threads. There's over here, there's this tool which needs to go in here to get those off. Sometimes this part will actually lock on, so I'll have to use some anti-seize on it as well. But also, if I need to actually take that off, then I'm just going to have to take these two bolts off. Sorry. If I need to take them off, I'm just going to have to undo these two bolts so that I can get in there. I won't be changing it all that often, but that's just the way it is, rather than spending, $3 or $5 or whatever $1,000 on a new lathe. So the next thing I'm going to do, just for a giggle, just to see if I can get it to work. So I bought this cheap motor controller, speed controller. So I'm going to see if I can wire that in. I have already tried just running the whole lathe off this, but it didn't work because it's got a cutout. Sorry, I think the lathe's actually got a cutout where the voltage drops down too far and it won't keep going. So I'm going to put this particular wiring section past, sorry, upside down again, past this switch, because that seems to be what was cutting out. So I'm basically going to pull this apart and wire it in. So I've just taken the screws out of the bottom of it, and you can see inside. So I'm just going to replace the main cable that comes in and remove this all-world plug at the side here and just put wires back in there as well. But I'm kind of glad I did pull it apart, because if you can see just here, that is actually a hole where the heatsink off this board has actually punched a hole through that wire. So that could have been interesting. So I'll just cut this wire off and replace it, and also remove this and probably have both wires coming in out of this hole, and then I'll probably just cut a hole in through here somewhere, for maybe on this fin here, just so the cables can come straight in there for ease of access. So let's see if I can fit that up and see if I can make that work. Alright, so I may have got a bit carried away while I was off camera for a moment there. So I've pulled this apart. I made an absolute mess getting the socket out of here, because I just couldn't get to the plugs properly to undo the clips, and it all shattered into a million pieces. Never mind. So I'm just going to cut this cable off, and I'll have to resolder a new one onto here for the active. The rest of them, so the neutral and the earth, are just wired straight through. So I will wire those through onto here. I'm going to cut the cable tie off and pull these wires out so that I've actually got some cable to work with. I'm hoping that there's enough cable there, because what I want to do is basically pull it apart, cut it apart, wire it all back together again. Obviously hoping that, sorry, not hoping, but wiring it in such a way that if it doesn't work, I can pull it apart and put it back to how it was. Alright, so that's the two outgoing plugs coming off. I'm actually now thinking about it. I know I still need to cut them apart. So I'm basically probably just going to cut these wires here so that I can just put them into a terminal block, and then just rewire everything through it. And then if it doesn't work, then at least I can just cut them off and the wires will still reach up to where they were. That's the theory anyway. So these are the two wires that I've just cut off. So these are going to be the feed into the motor controller, and then the output will just go obviously straight out to the wires I've cut off inside the box. In fact, as I'm thinking about it now, I probably didn't even need to cut the negative one off. I only need the active to go into this box, I think. No, I don't. I need there is a neutral in there, you idiot. Alright, so now I'm putting the active in, that's going to feed out to the motor controller. So there's my two wires that are going to go to the motor controller, and then there's going to be one coming back in. We're going with this wire here. That'll be the return from the motor controller to the actual motor itself. Alright, so I've got my unit. Just going to put my unit up here. It's easier for me to cut cables as to where they're going and what they're doing. So this is the active coming in. So just for the sake of the exercise, I'll feed that through this hole here. I'll feed them all through that hole. So this one is the active coming in. So I'll feed that to the active coming in here. And now I'll do the same with the neutral. Okay, so now I've just got this last black wire here, which is their active. So I think I'm just going to feed that active back into here, and then it can go into this active wire just sitting there. Alright, I'm just going to feed this one out through here so I know it's the odd one out. Pop that there. Hopefully I've got enough cable here to reach it into there. Probably don't actually, just to be annoying. Alright, so before I turn it on I better plug those back in, otherwise it's not going to work very well. Just quickly check that I seem to have this all going the right way. There's a neutral there, so I've just got to be careful with that. Alright, I'm going to turn it all the way up to full, turn it on, so that it's ready to go. Alright, we'll fire it up and see if it actually works the way it should without a load. Now I just need my power cable, and where did that go? Come back. Oh. Okay, here we go. Okay. Alright, I'm not sure what I think about that. Not sure if it's actually changing the speed that much, or if it's just getting to a point where the voltage just drops off. I don't have an RPM gauge to be able to tell. I think it might have a bit more of a pronounced effect if I actually put a piece of wood in there and actually have a bit of load on it. So I'll try that, see how it goes. Alright, before I sign this video off properly, I've already recorded the sign off, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is just quickly show you what I'm going to do to clean it up. So I've just drilled a hole in the top there for the wires to come up. I'm not sure it's going to stay in, so rather than sort of fully rewiring the whole thing, I've just rerouted a couple of the cables and pulled off a couple of the extra lengths. So I'm now just going to screw the box together and drill a couple of holes in the top for the box to actually screw down with. So I'll do that and show you what I do there. Okay, so box going back together. Yeah, so I'm honestly not convinced that it'll stay, because I don't think it's having a full proper effect on this as that I want it to have. It's supposed to be able to work on induction motors, which this is, but maybe it's just not really designed for it properly. Alright, got a drill for the screws that I'm going to screw it down with. It's a bit of an old burnt one, so hopefully it still manages to drill a hole. Alright, screw this box in. Alright, put the lid back on, put the cover back on rather. Alright, where did those screws go? There we go. Alright, that's the cover back on that side. Now I've just got to do this back panel as well. It's a bit warped and wobbly. Feels like all the screws are stripped out, so I'll have to re-thread those. Haven't done anything with this cover. I found some screws that were the right size from a TV or something, so that's why I was using those. Okay, so there's the covers back on. Don't know who put the paint there, that wasn't me. So now I've just got to mount it back to the bench and give it a good run. There we go. Alright, so one final postscript of the video before I actually go through with the logging off again, which I've already done again. So this is just the final view of the lathe in its operating position. And I also mentioned about the fun and games of getting this tool to fit into where it needs to fit. I found yet another washing machine tool. This one's for putting in transit bolts and stuff like that, so I might just attack it with the angle grinder and see if I can get those to fit across where this bit used to be. So we'll give that a crack and see what happens. And of course, one final bit with it actually running. There we go. Now hopefully I can actually start doing some turning. That'll be nice. Yeah, that speed controller's definitely not doing an awful lot. It's doing a little bit. So yeah, it may not last. That's okay. Alright, well that'll do it for this video. I've obviously got some cleaning up to do in this wiring that I've got here. I will put it all back together and clean it up a little bit and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then I will just pull it out and go back to the full one. So thanks for watching till the end. Don't forget to give it a like and a subscribe, and drop a comment down there. Let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.